Hello, everyone. I'm Mystery.
And I am Bolton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we're the Duality of Man. And in accordance with our Warhammer-based theming and meming recently, last week we talked about the chaos hordes infesting our universities, our corporations, and our culture, and this time we're talking about the human equivalent of Tyranids, some of whom have actually managed to somehow align themselves with Khorne, if you happen to be in Europe.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't quite getting the analogy, we're referring to the ever increasing migrant crisis that's occurring in America, the UK, Europe, etc. The Tyranids are alien insectoid creatures in Warhammer 40k that their entire purpose in life is to uh, consume biomass and resources.
They're
Uh,
they're ba- they're basically the nematodes from SpongeBob if they were also the aliens from the Alien franchise.
yeah, they go to a planet, strip it of all life, and then when they're done with that, they move on to the next planet and then strip that of all life and resources.
Rinse
So
and repeat until literally all life in the universe is tyrannid or dead.
yeah, so we have a bunch of Tyranids at our southern border currently, whose only purpose, it seems, is to suck up as much resources as they can. And as we've seen in Europe, when they stop getting those resources, they'll just leave and move on to somewhere else.
Or they render the new culture a sub-organ of the third world, vis-a-vis the Rotherham rape gangs and so on. And or in our case, in the good old US of A, the cartel issue.
Yes, that's true. Like, just so you know, the Tyranids reduce all life to biomass where they absorb, including the populace. To the Tyranids, the populace is just another resource they can use.
And if they run out of non-Tyranid life forms to eat, they will just literally eat each other. Again, vis-a-vis the cartels and or the Muslim rape gangs.
So I gotta admit, when I first came up with this analogy, I was honestly surprised at how perfect this was.
It's one of those funny because it's true things, and no matter how many layers of magnification you project onto it, it doesn't stop fitting, and that's when you know things are truly in the very beginning stages of being fucked up. Because we're not in full Chaos Cult territory or full Tyranid invasion territory, but we're in the beginning stages of both somehow, and given how the later stages go for all parties involved, how about no? How about none of the above? How about Exterminatus? This is my answer to that.
Uh, by the Emperor, I'd give anything for some Space Marines.
Where are the populist and libertarian chads when you need them?
They're currently struggling against the gene stealer cults infesting our planet.
And or the acolytes of Zinch who are preventing them from breeding and or having a happy life. But never mind.
Yeah, yeah, because the Tyranids do not care. The migrants do not care. Very evidently, is if you've seen that video of the two cops being assaulted in New York, and then when the migrants were let off without bail, they walked past and flipped off the cameras. These people do not give a damn.
Have you seen, speaking of things that demonstrate how little they care, have you seen the one interview that the British journalist asked the two Muslim teenagers about, or maybe they were in their 20s, about um well, how do you think being sexually assaulted makes the woman feel? And their only response was basically, "Oh yeah, she might yell or she might make a fuss, and that would be bad." Like they had, like, even though the journalist like rephrased the question in relation to how it makes her feel several times, they just did not get the oh wait, you mean we should care about our victims' mental capacity and so on at
Yeah,
all.
her
Fucking
feelings about
ridiculous.
it are utterly inconsequential to them. Her resistance, however, to them might pose a problem.
The fact that she might be so ungracious as to snitch on them and or make a fuss against them is more the issue than her agency in the matter at all. Because she's not a Muslim and therefore is dehumanized by default, don't you know?
This is why, in my opinion, America absolutely needs a Second Amendment. If the if the systems that we set up specifically to protect the citizenry and maintain law and order utterly fail, we need some way to protect ourselves. And I'm not
Yeah,
calling for vigilantism. I'm calling for protecting yourself if someone tries to
yeah.
assault you.
I mean the provisions are literally there in the wording of the amendment for rising of a militia and or the redressing of grievances. So yeah, this is certainly a grievance what needs to be redressed. Either I whether you're talking about the cartels in America or the third world hordes, the third world middle-aged hordes that are descending upon Europe indiscriminately thanks to Mama Merkel, um and Guy Verhofstadt and company. Like Jesus, I like obviously neither is preferable, but I'm glad I don't live in Europe at the moment because for all that the assorted Latino and Latina hordes might be difficult, and the cartels are certainly difficult, I would still rather deal with them than deal with fundamentalist Muslims.
The thing is, the there is such a lack of control over the border. People are flying in from other countries to go to Central America to then come up through the southern border. We've seen Chinese people that cross the southern border illegally. What the hell?
Which, on the topic of immigration, if we must have some vector of immigration, why the fuck don't we take them from Cuba or from Cuba or Hong Kong, considering that those are the kinds of immigrants that would actually be, appreciative of our country and likely to immigrate within its culture instead
Because
of
they would reject
actively
communism.
hostile to it in every conceivable circumstance.
They would reject communism right off the bat, and that would
Yeah,
be inconvenient to our
it'll
economy.
just be like, I did not leave Cuba to come and be assaulted by Antifa, so fuck you. Which entirely based, or I did not come out of the thumb of the CCP just to be tossed into yet another bureaucratic hellhole, which again based.
But
But no, we can't have the based migrants. We can't have the actual we can't have the actual fellow humans in the Warhammer model, or we can't even have like the Craft World Eldar or the Chow. We have to have the freaking possibly chaos infected Tyranids.
it's what really disgusts me is the fact that the federal government isn't just failing at the border; they are actively preventing the states from trying to secure the border as well. It's not enough for you to not do your job; you have to prevent other people from doing the job you should be doing.
Well, and to that point, and to the point we just got done talking about, it flabbergasted me that when Cuba started having its "We Love America" protests and "Fuck Castro" protests, Biden actually came out, and so did most of the members of his cabinet, to disavow the Cubans. Not the El Salvadorians, not the cartels, not the Muslims, not the literal terrorists, but the people who were like, America's awesome and we want to be part of it. And Biden's response was basically, "How dare you, you capitalist scum?" Joe, do you not think that might not be the wrong way around?
And one I don't know if you saw this video, but one hilarious video just shows like how careful you really need to be when it comes to immigration. There's a video of Ilhan Omar talking about how she was a Somalian first and a Muslim second. No mention of America in that speech, and how she was
Yeah,
like so pro Somalia, and that how Somalians in America were the best bet at improving Somalia. Just like
I mean,
she's not an American;
good for
she
you
is a
for distancing
Somalian,
yourself
and
from the fundamentalists, I suppose. But could you not give some credence to the nation that, for all intents and purposes, raised you and breathed life into you? Because I'm pretty sure she hasn't been to Somalia in many, many years at this point. She's been an American citizen for most of her adult life, and yet we can go hang, I suppose.
like God, I hate that woman. Like genuinely, like she when becoming a Congress woman, like she was supposed to swear an oath to have America first, like have
Like
no
every
other
other
loyalty.
American politician.
Yeah, she was supposed to have like no other loyalties to no other country except America, and that's just blatantly false.
I just it, not that people like her understand the gravity of an oath in the first fucking place, which just makes my reminiscent of the Renaissance period ass just be like completely enraged because oaths are supposed to mean things. God damn it! But again, at least our variety of Muslim is mostly the too stupid to realize what she's advocating for Muslim instead of the oh yes, the fact that the woman might say something is the biggest problem of me doing unspeakable things to her type of Muslim. At least not yet. Then again, if the recent Palestine fiasco is any indication, quite a large swath of social justice oriented academia will just chad yes to Bin Laden's speeches because, oh hey, you hate Western civilization too, and you're revolutionary too. We're buddies, derp. I just. And meanwhile, and I bring this up because we are after all at the end of the day a men's rights podcast first and foremost.
But
Meanwhile,
speaking of,
despite all of the protestations to colonialism bad, slave trade bad, etc., the powers that be, the current aristocracy, would much rather have quote unquote racially diverse servants from the third world instead of ever engaging with their own homegrown working class countrymen. And who suffers mostly as a result of that? It is mostly men. Yes, women also suffer too, but most of the people doing most of the dirty jobs will now and most likely in the foreseeable future be men until we can get the AI and the robots going. So yeah,
there's something I
working
want to bring
class
up.
working class
Um,
American and European men get screwed over because our betters prefer third world slavery instead
there's
of
something I got to bring up here regarding Ilhan Omar. Did you see that she got into a spat with the president of El Salvador, Bukele?
the one who is please face the walling all of the cartel bastards.
Yeah, the South American Giga Chad. Yes.
The,
Um, but
honestly, I think Malay might be competing for that crowd. In fairness, like damn.
but yeah, the thing is, like, he recently won his reelection with 83% of the vote.
Yeah, no shit.
Like, like that is amazing. And the thing is, like, there was so many like Western media outlets trying to paint him as a threat to democracy in El Salvador. And hold on, let me
I
pull up the quote that this idiot
fucking
Ilhan Omar said. Says the Salvadoran people deserve free and fair elections without fear of repression. The thing is, they've like
Yeah,
had
it's
like
their choice, goddammit.
yes, they chose and they voted for him. And the thing is, like, here's what I'm going to say. Like, people have been complaining about this guy because they claim that he's quote unquote violating the human rights of some of the most dangerous gang members in the world. But the thing is, though, democracy is just one way to run a government. And here's the thing: even if you have a democratic country, it doesn't mean a damn thing if the country is literally falling apart.
Or if it's being enslaved by the machinations of violent ideologues and or cartels and mobsters. Like we understood this back in the 70s. We understood that the mafia owned large swaths of the government, and that was why we needed other institutions like the FBI. That was what the FBI was originally founded to be, and then it didn't disappear after its job was done, but never the fuck mind.
Yeah. You know
Um,
the saying, Dalton. There's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program.
yeah, and J. Edgar Hoover being a merciless goddamn sociopath didn't help matters there. Like, for all that government bureaucracy is in it of itself inert, when the people in charge of said government bureaucracy or the people who those government bureaucracies rely on are also merciless, goddamn power hungry sociopaths who are out only for their own self improvement, that doesn't help either.
Yeah. So these people can criticize you, Kelly, all he wants, but the thing is, like, this man has made El Salvador great again. Like, this guy has done a remarkable job improving this country, like, to the point where people have stopped fleeing from El Salvador and are now moving to El Salvador because it's a lot safer.
Yeah, in absence of a Harry Dresden like figure who can just bloodline curse the bastards until they fall over dead, this is probably the best we can do.
Yeah, yeah. El Salvador is arresting all of its most dangerous criminals and throwing them into a hole. Meanwhile, cops are getting beaten up into New York, and the perpetrators are being let off. And not only were they let off, but they then went on to like flee the state. Like, they had to then go and try and retrack these guys down, and some were found in Arizona, and some were found
And
in California.
and of course, meanwhile, what was the party line with regards to somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse? He crossed my state lines over and over and over again. Even though he literally lived 15 minutes away from the respective border that he crossed, and he was crossing it for work. But the fuck. That then when the people are people we ideologically disagree with, then the state lines matter. When the chaos in question is all going according to plan, what state lines? State lines are immaterial, derp. It seriously looks like Heath Ledger's Joker speech to Harvey Dent was more right than we even realized at the time. Nobody panics when it's all going according to plan. But
Yeah.
when one alleged right winger does one allegedly right wing thing, everyone loses their fucking minds.
Yeah,
Unless
speaking
those right wingers come from a third world traditionalist dictatorship and or theocracy, then the right wingedness suddenly just vanishes into thin air because they're brown and from a foreign culture somehow.
to bring up another instance of violent tyrannies attacking the native populace, let's see, there was a man in Colorado, a migrant, who did a DUI and killed a teenager and his mother on December 12th. Let's see, he had actually been deported from the US 4 times before the crash occurred and had been arrested for DUIs multiple times before that.
But if he had been deported, what the fuck is he still doing? I what I don't think you understand. Like Joe and Joe's administration, I don't think you understand what the concept of deportation means. If he was deported 4 times and yet somehow was still here,
Like, if even one part of this system had actually done its damn job, that mother and child would still be alive.
that's just ay ay ay. Again, like You keep using the word deportation. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Well,
If someone can be successfully deported 4 times and still be in the country they were deported from, that's not how that works.
it's entirely
Either he
possible
was
that
successfully deported 4 times and let back in, or you just simply don't happen to know what the word deport means.
it's entirely possible that he was deported and then snuck back in because a lot of the people when they come in through the border, like those people aren't checking, not really. Like those people can give any name, and like I saw a video where it's a pass where a lot of the migrants come in and they will like, literally bury their identity and documentations so that they can lie to the border guards. Like they
But
literally dug up a hole with a bunch of documents and IDs in it. Like these people do not give a damn, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they know that they are just scamming these idiotic, like bleeding heart morons.
maybe I'm naive, but the last I remembered, we did have like DNA testing and or facial recognition software. Like these are things that we
I
could
mean,
use that
true,
would
but
that
no,
would be
you just like the
child's
sheer.
play to use in this context, and it would like solve at least this particular section of this problem.
I mean, possible, but don't you have to understand that the sheer numbers of people that are coming through here, it's not going to be possible for them to process that many DNA tests.
Okay, but they keep files allegedly on everyone else who comes in every other way. What's wrong with having people provide a DNA sample? And if they don't want to provide a DNA sample, well then, back out the way they came. Do they go? Like I don't want to pull the Patriot Act. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. But seriously, we have the resource of DNA evidence and or facial recognition software, and we keep files on these people allegedly anyway. So why we don't use the resources we have, especially because DNA is the one thing you can't easily fake.
I mean, our system can't even make sure that these people show up for their, court dates that they're given for immigration court. Like, there's no way they're going to keep track of a DNA database. Like, these people are not that competent.
I know, but once again, if we lived in a more sane world and not in the most absurd and clown worldish of all timelines.
Like, if we lived in a sane world, this wouldn't even be happening.
Okay, but assuming that at one point this did occur in a sane world, it could easily be solved by, oh hey, we have DNA technology and DNA doesn't lie, at least as far as we know. So have everyone who comes in here give a DNA sample. And of just like it doesn't we keep DNA samples and stuff on file for criminals and like foreign nationals and every other fucking thing. So why not make use of the technology we have in a way that would actually cut down on most of the actual criminal element here? And hell, if they did do something criminal while they were here, you know what would make that amazingly convenient to deal with? If you already had their DNA on file and could just go, yeah, you were here on a visa and you committed a crime and we have your DNA on file, dead to rights. So out you go. Like, and yes, that could potentially get Orwellian because the government shouldn't have access to people's DNA and blah blah blah. But let's not make the best the enemy of the good here. Like, I think this is a severe enough issue where it'd be. I think I would be willing to look the other way if, like, everyone who came in here on a visa or temporarily or over the border was required to give a DNA sample. Shouldn't require that of long-term citizens, and maybe there should be some kind of moratorium where after somebody has been here legally for however many years that information can be deleted, but like something something has to give here, and it occurs to me that we're not using our resources effectively, and it pisses me off.
So you also have to consider that as much as our government is, you know, failing, if not outright assisting, you know, all these, illegal immigrants coming into our country and basically using our country like a toilet. You also have to keep in mind the people who I'm going to call the gene stealer cults of this entire situation, and that would be the NGOs.
Oh, goody.
Yeah.
Bureaucrats.
So NGOs, non-government organizations, they like a lot of them do good things, but a lot of them, especially in regards to immigration, are just they're basically just human trafficking organizations. Like, no lie, because literally their entire purpose is to facilitate and make it easier for these like large caravans coming all the way from South America up to Central America to come to the border, and then providing them with aid, providing them with legal defense to try and get them through, and even giving them money to give to the cartels to sneak them through the border. Like, the fact that these organizations have not been shut down for seditious activities against the United States of America will never surprise me. And not only that, but a lot of these organizations get government grants. So your taxpayer money is being used to pay organizations to sneak migrants across the border, and then more taxpayer money is being given to the migrants who disrespect your country and break laws and harm American citizens.
And again, we can't have the migrants who actually love, respect, and want to be a part of the great American melting pot. The people from Cuba, the people from Hong Kong, the people from El Salvador, etc. Like, we can't have those because those are dangerous, untermentioned. But we can have the cartels and or the Muslim extremists. And by the way, the same is true with regards to NGOs over across the pond with regards to the Muslim migrants as well. And again, when are we going to wake up to the fact that Germany may have allegedly surrendered at the end of the Second World War, but Mama Merkel used the EU and played it like a fiddle, and now basically Germany is one of the main power holders within the EU. I don't want to go full Rick and Morty, but this seems like a Reich with extra steps here.
It's not just like NGOs in America, it's also the United Nations. The United Nations High Commission on Refugees has set up offices en route, from South America to America, and cities like Tapachula on the Guatemalan border. This is a quote from this is a quote from a man named Todd Bensman. This is, I've been watching the United Nations UNHCR distribute cash debit cards to migrants. They're providing food, basic necessities, prescription drugs. They call it movement assistance, which is to say they're providing transportation money so the migrants can continue moving forward. So they know what the fuck they're doing.
Question. Serious, real talk question. Has the UN ever done anything it was allegedly supposed to do on paper? Ever?
I honestly don't think so. Like, the UN, to anybody who's actually been paying attention, is just an absolute joke of an organization and no longer deserves to exist.
Well, and it's not like this is new information because, like, I don't know if anyone here is a fan of Blackadder, but I always keep remembering the segment from Blackadder that's like, how did the war start? And it describes how the First World War bled into the Second World War and etc. And it was basically the predecessor to the UN, the League of Nations, going, hey, if we all decide to hold each other all accountable and hold everyone else at gunpoint, then there can never be a war. Oh no, wait, it created a massive cascade effect, and now there's a massive war instead of just a regional one. Fuck. That completely backfired. I'm sure it will never backfire again, though. Enter World War II. Fuck, it backfired again. Who could have seen this coming? Literally everyone. It was, like, to quote that Blackadder segment, there was one tiny flaw in the plan. It was entirely bollocks. That is basically the League of Nations and then the UN in a nutshell. They tried. It was the aristocracy of the period going, hey, if we all decide to ally with each other, then we can never justify a war again. Oh no, wait! All that did was magnify a war several dozen times over. Fuck. But I'm sure it'll work if we just try it harder next time. Leads to Cold War, leads to World War II, etc., ad nauseum. It has never worked, and they keep doing it. I
Here's the
just
thing with the with like the previous generation of people who ran the UN. Yes, they were corrupt and worthless, but at least they weren't insane. Like the people who are in charge of like
or geriatric,
the people
which
who are in charge now are useless, insane, and ideological.
and old and out of touch to the point that they're literally almost all of them like septuagenarians or octogenarians at best.
It's just like we know
But
this problem can be.
even if they could be relied upon to be sane and or with it at any point, they're literally too old now to mentally keep up with the way the world is turning. Like the old guard is the old guard for a reason, and the old paradigm has long since lived out its usefulness. And again, if we're going by like the Blackadder how did the war start logic, it was a kind of stupid idea to begin with.
See, I have another quote here. It says the only thing that's really obviously problematic about these migrant advocacy groups, these nonprofits, they're out there lobbying for money for the migrants and for policies that increase the number of migrants. So when you say we're doing this out of the goodness of our hearts and all in the service of the Lord, which a lot of these organizations are Christian, and I moving on. So when you say we're doing this out of the goodness of our hearts and all in the service of the Lord, it's also in the service of their bottom lines. Yeah, these individuals like advocate for more of the problem. So people give them money to alleviate the problem.
And again, men's rights, talking point time. Who suffers the most as the result of all of these migrants? The working class men of the world, be it European or the working class men of the Anglosphere, the Western world, etc. Like those are the people who suffer the most as a result of this. Because whatever you may think of Bernie Sanders, back in 2016, he at least had enough sense to know migration is a corporate scheme because the more unskilled labor there is going around, the lower the price is on any given particular interval um of low skilled labor, and as a result, the native working classes of all of these countries in the Anglosphere or Europe or the wider Western world get screwed over because these migrants, unfortunately for them, come for the most part from the third world where they are expecting to work for pennies a day rather than a living wage. And how much harder does that make any given actual, social democratic initiatives, my fellow leftists? Like seriously. Like I am and was a Bernie bro, and my second and third choices in the last election were Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard. Some of those, Medicare for all, freedom dividend type ideas make sense to me on some kind of paper, but how the hell are we going to actualize them if we keep flooding the workers market with people who will work for pennies a day and therefore the corporations never actually have to come to the bargaining table with any of the natives of the country because they can just swap you out for either automation or a migrant when it's convenient for them.
It's not just wages. The more migrants that come in, rent and housing prices are going to increase because more people are looking for some place to live. And
Yeah,
if
because
you're like
because
an American
resources are
citizen,
limited and all.
if you're an American citizen who's like trying to save up to buy a house, like all these people are just going to here increase the prices of housing, so it's going to be impossible for you to buy your own home.
And meanwhile, again, the aristocracy, such as they are, will do nothing about this but complain about millennials being man children and living at home, or Zoomers being man children and living at home. Did it ever occur to you that we have to because there are no resources going around, or the few resources there are being held in fewer and fewer hands because BlackRock and all the other various consortiums buy up land and property and then build council housing that basically isn't worth the land it's standing on, but they do it anyway. Like,
I've lived on my own for the last few years now, and it's becoming harder and harder to sustain myself just because of all the inflation and all the rent prices increasing. And I've also noticed an increasing number of non-English speaking brown people in my town.
have you heard about the OK Renter meme?
Yes, I believe I saw it on the Lotus Eaters.
That is apparently the aristocratic boomer response to OK Boomer, which maybe I am being an idiot, which is entirely possible. Dunning-Kruger is a thing and all, but given that the context of OK Boomer is very much often you're an out-of-touch, old-fashioned aristocratic toff who doesn't understand how things are today, how the hell is OK Renter supposed to be an adequate response? Because that's basically just boomers going, yes, we are out of touch aristocratic toffs and we're gloating. It's literally, yes, we are the upper class and we are looking down on you plebs. Chad, yes to that. It's such an own goal. I can't even count it. It fucking. But they still have they still feel entitled to this like moral indignation over millennials, Zoomers, and later Gen Xers because some people actually have to function in the world that you keep aristocratically fucking over for ideological reasons and/or out of touch normative reasons.
Yeah, shit like that is how you get Robespierre.
Yeah, and or Randall Flagg, which if we wind up in a situation where we need a Randall Flagg, I will volunteer for that role because somebody needs to fucking do it.
Who is that again?
The reoccurring wandering trickster immortal in Stephen King's universe.
I haven't read much Stephen King's novels.
Um, I would to know about Flag, I would start with a book called The Eyes of the Dragon, but the book he's most famously the villain of is called The Stand.
Ah, I
And
can't.
I don't know why, but my power just went out, I think.
Oh, I was about to say your camera's not working anymore.
Yeah, I think the power just went out. I'm
Oh,
going to switch to icon just to make it more visually
yeah. Well, I hope everything's okay up
conducive.
there.
Hmm?
I said I hope everything's okay up there.
I think it is. I don't know why it's all gone out. So whatever happened, it we don't usually have power outages here anyway, because there's like a power distribution station like a right in my front yard. So whatever happened, it must have happened like just now. But it'll
Yeah,
kick back on in a bit, I'm sure,
yeah.
and
But
I
if
will. I'll just have to sit here in the dark until it does.
yeah, like if we ever do get like a French Revolution style situation here in America, like I gotta admit, it's becoming harder and harder for me to justify stopping them
Allons de gens de la patrie, de gens de moi.
because like the systems that we have in America, it's become so like it's become so thoroughly corrupt. Speaking of which, let me transition to go over the let's see, what is it? The border bill that I told you about.
Mm-hmm.
See, let's see. First of all, the total bill, the total amount for the quote unquote border bill, $118 billion. Now, you would think that it doesn't take that much money to actually secure the southern border, and you would be right. But the thing is, all that money isn't going to the southern border. In fact, even most of that money isn't going to the southern border.
Because heaven forfend we actually use our money efficiently and for the purposes that it's intended.
I mean, heaven forbid we use our money for us. See, I have a breakdown of the billions. Let's see, and these are, I believe, the numbers I'm going to read are going to be in the billions, not the millions. See, 2.4 billion for conflicts in the Red Sea, 4.8 billion for Indo-Pacific regions, 10 billion to Gaza, 14.1 billion to Israel. Why are we funding both sides of that war?
Because if we didn't fund Israel, we would be anti-Semitic. But if we didn't fund Gaza, we would be Islamophobic and Western imperialist and blah.
Trying to please both sides and pissing them both off.
Yep.
Well, at least it's increase. The very best thing I can say about this is that it increases the likelihood that he's going to lose.
Yeah. And also, if we're lucky, Israel and Gaza will simply destroy each other, and then we won't have to deal with this anymore.
Maybe we should get another crusade going. You've both proven that you can't be that you're not neither of you are responsible enough to take care of the Holy Land. But to get back to the border, the U.S. border gets 20.2 billion, and do you know who gets the most money by far out of any of this?
Hmm.
It's a small country in Eastern Europe.
Ukraine.
Yes. For some reason, we're giving $60 billion to Ukraine while we're facing a crisis at our own border. Like Jesus, like, at some point, you just have to give it the fuck up. Like Jesus Christ, are we going to destroy our own country in a futile attempt to help Ukraine defeat Russia? Like it's not happening.
Yeah.
I don't want to destroy our own country to just help people who are not even officially our allies, just so that our president can keep his corrupt partner in power.
Evidently. And or for some misguided sense of moral superiority, which in most circumstances we're not supposed to be all white savior anymore, except when it's social justice approved, and then all of a sudden it's not white savior mythology anymore somehow. Again, it's one of those, we hate imperialism and the slave trade and blah and blah and blah, but it is also our responsibility to take care of everyone else before we take care of ourselves, because we're the moral superiors of the world, don't you know?
God, just I can't like I used to be uh, a Democrat voter. I can't see myself ever voting for them again.
Well, at the moment, I don't even see anyone I can support in the Democratic Party, because like I think there might be one guy left, which is Ro Khanna. I really like Ro Khanna, but they're never gonna run him as long as the neoliberal side of the Democrats still exists. Um, Yang and Tulsi basically ditched the Democrats after last time's fiasco, and Bernie has shown himself to be so like limp-wristed and cowardly that he lets himself be bulldozed by the same neoliberal establishment when push comes to shove. So like, who do I have left? Like on the Democratic side, I have Ro Khanna. That's basically it. Ro Khanna is pretty much the last good Democrat in existence is Ro Khanna, and they're never gonna let him run as long as the like aristocratic uniparty, the nouveau riche aristocracy still exists. So fuck it. And it's not like the Republicans are that much better. On the Republican side, you basically have Trump and Rand Paul. Like like MAGA candidates and Rand Paul are basically the only ones that are worthy of any kind of consideration on the Republican side either. So it's like,
Yeah, but the only thing is that there's more of them on the Republican side than there are than say one row Kana and the Democrats.
yeah, for now anyway.
The thing
Lord,
is, like the Trump populist people actually have a chance of overtaking the party.
they do, and that's why,
They
despite the
hope they
fact that
succeed.
I'm a classically liberal social democrat, I will probably be voting for Trump in this next time around because I'm at the point where it's like literally everyone but the normative establishment institutions, like literally anyone who is populist, libertarian, anti-establishment. I don't care which side they happen to be on.
Yeah, just like it has become like it's it's not just that they're like nuts, even though many of them are. It's just like I can't like morally in good conscience vote for them.
Like at this point, I'm reminded of, I think it was Cato the Elder, but it might have been Cicero who famously kept saying Carthage delenda est. Right now, I'm basically at that same point with like norms and decorum and bullshit. I'm at the point of decorum delenda est. Decorum must be destroyed for anything good to happen. So fuck it. Anyone but the establishment.
It's just
Because the only thing bipartisanship gets you is they bipartisanly agree to continue the normative establishment bullshit, continue the neoliberal, conservative bullshit, and constantly screw over anyone who isn't them, and
yeah,
even screw over themselves in the long term, but they don't care about the long term. Like,
they've put their differences aside and have formed a united front for the purpose of screwing over the American public.
yeah, and it's not like other Western countries have it any better.
Yeah,
Look across the. I mean, did you hear that good King Charles has cancer apparently?
I heard about that, but I mean, hey, people get cancer. Unfortunately, I don't know. Like,
Well, but the sad truth is that because Charles was a prince for like 74 of the 75 years he's been on this planet, he was never going to, his reign was never going to be all that like noble and mythic. He was always going to be basically nothing but a stopgap between Elizabeth and
William.
William. But now that he has cancer, it's become very obvious that barring some kind of, medical miracle, his reign is going to be very, very short indeed. And it's not like the people in parliament across the pond have any interest in not screwing their people over, because the only people who do have an interest in not screwing their people over are in the minority parties who will never get elected, because despite the fact that despite the fact that the UK has like 5 or 6 different major parties to choose from, much like us, it's only ever a two-horse race between the Liberals, or yeah, the Labour and the Conservatives, which are basically they're Democrats and Republicans. And just like
Except in
us,
the
it's
UK.
mostly the neocons and neolibs that win, rather than the people who have any sort of principles regarding either of those things.
One distinction that I would make is that in the UK, it seems that the two parties are even more closely aligned in terms
Yeah,
of what they actually do, even though they pretend to oppose one another.
yeah, because the what would be the Trumpian vibe over there gets squelched by the multi-party system, basically. In a world that was more like the way the US does things, somebody like Nigel Farage or David Rees-Mogg or Philip Davies would be their Trump. But or better yet, maybe even a Tommy Robinson would be their Trump. But because the UK does have at least the excuse of having multiple parties, those sorts of outsider voices get shunted off into their own parties and never get to undermine the Tories or the Labour constituencies. Even though if Labour and the Tories get bad enough, eventually those minority parties will become preferable to the establishment in the same way as it is over here, at which point those minority parties are going to make up a larger percentage of the polls, and they're probably going to form a coalition to topple Labour and the Tories, and so much the better.
I would just love the ability to read minds so I could actually maybe get a glimpse into what the fuck these people are actually thinking. Like, how could. Like, I want to know what's going on in the mind of somebody who just absolutely betrays their own people and civilization. Like, I want to know the thought processes behind that. Because
Based on most of what these people have written and what these people have said, the standard argument is we should only listen to the valid people, and those unmentionable plebs beyond the reach of the Overton window are not valid people, and therefore, if we listen to them, we're bad people, so let's just avoid listening to them as much as possible and screw them over as much as possible. It's literally those people over there are demons, and therefore invalid, so they don't get a say in the proper running of proper society. It's the cult of I occasionally refer to it as the cult of norms, or maybe the cult of the Overton window. It's literally anything inside the Overton window is at least admissible to the discussion. Anything outside of the Overton window is inherently haram, so forbidden.
I think it also has to do with the myth that they've built for themselves about their own countries, about how they're like brutal colonizers and they oppressed
Yeah, the
people and
guilt.
they were and they feel like they somehow like everything bad that happens is what they deserve because of things that they did in the past,
The
which is
constant
absolutely
need to
ridiculous.
atone, yeah.
I
The like
I
flagellate style whipping themselves because oh the sins of our ancestors, oh the sins of our etc. and so on, and the power's back on. Hooray.
I've actually taken to calling them civic masochists.
That is a very good name. Good meme skills there.
Yeah. Yes, copyright duality of man.
Seriously. What episode number are we on?
I don't know. We don't number them. We probably should though. I
Yeah,
probably
we must have done at least 50 of these by now. Because we must have been doing it for almost a year.
over a year, almost certainly. But I'll probably go in one day and start numbering them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, civic masochists because like they want punishment for their country, for their civilizations, for their people, and like
Because they've taken they act again, the thing that defines them is the true believer aspect of it. And that's why for all of this talk of corruption and opportunism, I still don't think that's anywhere near as dangerous as the genuine convinced true believers. Because after a certain point, after a certain talking point has become part of the norm, part of the Overton window, the only way to convince people to give it up is to convince them that the Overton window is wrong, that the norms are wrong. And so many people will not do that. Even people ostensibly on our side, like Short Fat Otaku, Dev. Dude seriously and he describes himself as a normative institutionalist centrist. And it's like I think that's the main difference between him and I, because I also am a left-leaning centrist, but I have no regard for norms or institutions in and of themselves. I am a meritocrat, which means that if norms or institutions can be demonstrated to have a merit, then they can stay. But the very second that a norm or an institution is non-meritocratic, especially if it eventually grows to the point of becoming anti-meritocratic, then that norm or that institution can go fuck itself.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these institutions, these positions, gained power and legitimacy from the people who occupied them and did good works throughout generations. And now they feel like all the power and legitimacy resides within the position itself.
Yeah,
And no matter what they do, they are always valid.
it's literally we define what it is to be valid. Therefore, anything outside of what we define as valid is inherently, toxic, the devil, Nazis, etc. And therefore, we are always obliged to fight them as if they are Nazis because and maybe some of this is just last war syndrome. I don't know if you ever heard the expression every general wants to fight the last war. Um maybe it is because these institutions, just as we were, recently talking about, they got going in the lead up to the First World War and through the Second World War and the Cold War. I think it says something that our societal paradigm hasn't really shifted since the establishment of the League of Nations or what is now the UN and or like the status quo that was born just before the during the end of the Gilded Age and beginning of the Second World War all the way up through the Cold War into the Gulf War and of course now. I genuinely think part of this is straight up just that the people who are currently the aristocracy are also geriatric. They're all, at the very least, septuagenarians, if not octogenarians or nonagenarians. And and as a result, they've become so addicted to the norms established in the lead up to the First World War that they literally can't see beyond their own paradigm. And it says something that it has been. When did the First World War start? I want to say like 1915, 16, somewhere in there.
Maybe I will check and see. But
But
yeah,
at the very least, it's been at least a century, if not slightly longer than a century, if we go back to like the 1890s. Um, so like the fact the simple fact of the matter is societies and institutions or yeah like norms and institutions aren't supposed to last that long on a like global scale, and certainly not when you consider that this is the longest lived generation in probably human history. The fact that we do have almost all positions of power and authority held by effectively not just an aristocracy but a gerontocracy.
well, that's the thing. Like it would like them living this long wouldn't be a problem. The problem is that they're like holding on to power for dear life.
Well, and that's the thing, and I maintain that just like there is an age limit to when you can get into politics, there really should be an age cap too. Like we consider like retirement age between like 65 and 70. So why the fuck doesn't our political class have to abide by the same rule? I mean, what the age to get into the presidency is 45, I believe.
I believe it's 36.
Okay, so let's say for the sake of argument that we established an age cap to go along with the age requirement. So you could only become the president between the ages of 35. Are you sure that's not senators? I could have sworn 35 was senators and 45 was presidency. But
I'm pretty sure. I'll look it up.
irrespective, that gives you a good 40, 50 years to serve your country, to be a public servant, to have whatever, aristocratic machinations of power you want, and then just like everyone else, you can go into your golden years, and retire, and
Yeah,
then the
like
next generation can have a decent step up. But
yeah, it's 35. But what I would, what I genuinely want to know is why are they hanging on to power this much? I mean, what the hell are they doing it for? It's like they're clinging on to it for dear life. Is this being in a position of power is the only thing that's keeping them alive?
well, that, but also I think you remember the thing we were just talking about the okay boomer, okay renter thing. The idea of we are the adults in the room, we are the valid people, we are the aristocracy. I think it might be that. I think it might be just that they straight out do not consider anyone below the age of a Gen Xer to be an adult or to be what they would consider a real man or real adult TM.
Like, it's ridiculous. There are still like people who are younger than them who are making big strides in politics. But like my question is like you're all right. You're in power, but you're very old. You have like a few more left. Do you really want to spend the last years of your life being mired in politics? Go freaking sit on a beach somewhere.
Not on Epstein Island, please.
I mean,
Like literally any beach that doesn't involve pedo sympathy.
maybe that's why they don't go into power because if they allow other people to get in, they'll figure out all the corrupt shit they've done.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's not just they don't treat our civilizations like the democratic republics or constitutional monarchies that they are. They treat them literally like an aristocracy. That's why I hate the phrase our democracy so much, because when you pad out the phrase our democracy, it means democracy of the valid people. What does democracy of the valid people translate to? An aristocracy, which goes a long way to explain why they viscerally hate populism so much. Even though in a sane and, rational words mean things world, populism and democracy would be seen as almost the same thing because, of course, the Latin word populus is the same word effectively as the Greek word demos, from which we get the word democracy. I would go so far as to say if you're attempting to be democratic without being populist, you have failed. Because populism and democracy are sort of by definition the same thing, or at least in some sense should be very inextricably linked. But because they are elitist, not populist, because they genuinely do view democracy not as democracy, but as some kind of elected aristocracy, um, they do genuinely mean our democracy means democracy that belongs to we the valid people. Not all people, but we the valid people. We in the Overton window. We in the norm. Um, we in power.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's also why they demonize the shit out of libertarians and populists, because in their heads, that's just an anarchistic element. And we have to be the adults in the room and tell the children to wait until they've gotten out of their free thinking years before they are allowed to engage in power. Because don't you dare wobble the normative apple cart.
these Joe Biden literally said in one of his speeches in reference to the Constitution that we the people was referring to the U.S. government, not the citizens, but
That
the
didn't
government
exist at
itself.
the time. That one that they were explicitly breaking away from, Joe.
God, I mean, there was even one part in the quote unquote border bill that said that the government was giving itself power. I forget what it was, but basically it was going to allow itself to do uh, something. I forget exactly which, but it was going to allow itself to do that, whether it was constitutional or otherwise. The government was trying to grant itself power to ignore the Constitution.
And I know we've been laying the pop culture references on a bit thick lately, but I'm reminded of the scene from Attack of the Clones where Palpatine goes, I am grateful that you have given me these powers, and I swear that these powers shall be laid down when there is no longer a need for them. Cut to one movie later. The Republic must be reorganized into the first galactic empire. Literally. Uh,
Good. I mean, everybody's waiting for the so-called October surprise because this is an election year. Basically, some event that's going to happen in October that might swing the fate of the election. I'm honestly thinking it's going to be a FBI psyop, so maybe some false flag attempt on Joe Biden, so he can pull a Palpatine and go up there in front of the cameras and say, "This attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed." All of
which
Palpatine.
reminds me to all our viewers or all our hypothetical potential viewers, um, mind the glowies, please. Do not fall for that shit. If you happen to be in a protest and someone starts acting violent and you can't see their face, note that it glows so brightly you could see it from space. That's all I'm
Yeah,
gonna say.
there's no need for anybody to behave violently. I mean, this administration sucks so bad that he's already on track to lose. You just got to make sure that you go out there and vote and get everyone to vote as well. Because here's the thing, I swear to God, like one of the reasons that Trump lost in 2020 was because women voted so heavily in favor of Biden, and I swear to God, if they vote for Biden again, I'm seriously going to consider repealing the 19th Amendment.
That,
I
well, I
don't
mean,
care. I don't.
if you ever feel the need to swear off women entirely, those of us who have noticed the beauty of men are more than likely to have you if
It's
you
not.
want.
It's not about attraction. It's about making sure that they can't just you know vote on their emotions and screw over literally the rest of the country. Because
I'm just saying, like feminists decided back in the '70s that political lesbianism was a thing. So if you ever decide that political homosexuality needs to be a thing, let me know. I will get you the LGBT membership card.
no, thank you. But I think one of the reasons, honestly, why this would actually be a good idea is because what the, I thought about this for a while. What the 19th Amendment did was it made politics a divisive issue for families, because before it was okay, the husband has a vote, like he'll vote and he's going to vote what's in the best interest of him and his family, because
His household, yeah. Yeah,
but with the
the biggest lie in feminist history is that men ever used their power unilaterally to vote for only their best interests and never considered their families, which bullshit. The
yeah,
bullshittiest of the bullshit.
yeah, but the thing is, by giving women the right to vote, it now made women a political class, and if you have two um votes in a household, it's going to cause some political division, especially with an ideology
Unless
like
they can be
feminism.
persuaded to agree at all times, which yeah. Yeah, but not to be counter revolutionary or nothing, but all those women who were not in favor of suffrages or yeah, suffrage back in the day, this was one of the things that they specified as why they weren't in favor of it. Because they felt that women's privileges were enough power for them and that they had enough power over their household and their husband that to give them any other power would be unfair to their husbands and their families, which looking at it from the present looking backwards, that was remarkably prescient of all those anti-suffragist women.
I mean, to tie this back to the you know Tyranid crisis, one of the things that people are saying is that they're going to import all of these migrants and then give them path to citizenship and then just have them vote Democrat for the rest of their lives.
Well, the good news for a given value of good news is a lot of these people who come from these various third world countries are very, very, very traditionalistic. So as soon as they get comfortable, very often they end up switching parties and going full tradcon.
I mean, possibly, but here's the thing: like they're traditionalistic in their families and their own lives, but what if they just vote to you know what if they choose to vote for the people who are just giving them money?
I mean that is a variable, but we also have seen on the ground a lot of politicians being very confused. We let in all these undocumented immigrants. Why aren't they voting for us? Because you imported a bunch of people from a majoritarily Catholic country, you cunts. And the same is true for the Europeans as well. They're often surprised how much people like Tommy Robinson and people like the various immigrants to the British Isles tend to agree on the topic of, for example, traditional values and so on. So again, you thought that you could just make them all subservient little drones to the Western Overton window, but little did you know that the one mistake that John Locke made was tabula rasa. People are not blank slates, and therefore they come with their own values. And if you put them, especially in their own little bubbles of community, they will do nothing but proliferate those values. Especially if you import nothing but the fundamentalists who even their own countries don't like. Cough, cough.
I mean, you also have to remember that the federal government does not like Catholics, as the FBI's investigation documents have shown us. They're heavily invested in infiltrating Catholic churches. For what reason? I have no idea. I mean, it's not like
And
they can
yet,
be
and yet,
absolutely.
Muslims are totally okay. And in fact, you'd be racist or phobic to have any issues with a kind of traditionalism that is so traditionalistic that it literally went out of style in the ninth century.
Not only that, but you think they'd be more concerned about, I don't know, maybe cartels sneaking in dangerous drugs at the border, or terrorists sneaking in dangerous drugs at the borders, or I don't know, maybe politicians going to a brothel that was basically a spy network for Korea and Israel and I think Japan.
Yeah, human trafficking, rape gangs, a sudden rise in FGM, which again we can't talk about the MGM and how that would also be a bad thing because that's medically advised somehow, but that just because I'm against male circumcision doesn't mean that I get some kind of schadenfreude out of suddenly seeing female circumcision happening again. I would prefer that the number of circumcisions go down to as close to zero as we can manage it. Like I don't. It's like in Scat Francisco how suddenly the Black Plague and cholera have made comebacks, and it's like um this seems very much like the wrong way around, surely, especially if you're progressive and shit and believe in all the Hegelian dialectic of history. Surely this should seem like a backslide into primitivism if I were a more progressive individual. But like apparently not. Because something their culture, you can't possibly disagree with criminals, and you can't possibly disagree with cartels, and you can't possibly disagree with fundamentalist Muslims because that's just part of their culture. But if you ever see European or American alleged right winger advocating for their individual culture's rights, then that is imperialist and colonialist and blah and blah and blah. Never mind that some of the Muslims literally are admitting to literally colonizing parts of Europe, and many of the cartels are also literally colonizing parts of the inner cities in America. But what the fuck do we know?
All right, so we've been going for an hour and 14 minutes. Do you have any final words?
Can we just stop? Can we just acknowledge that maybe norms aren't the end all and be all of everything, and that maybe some people outside of the Overton window have some import to the world and are also valid human beings? And can we please, for the love of God, go back to preferring our own homegrown working class people to people who literally have not grown up out of the Dark Ages? Because I don't want to live in a Muslim and or fundamentalist Catholic theocracy. Like, I really would prefer not to be thrown off a building for being gay, beheaded for sorcery, and or like disemboweled for being disabled. If it's all the same to everyone, I would really much just like to go back to the 90s and early 2000s when like irreverence was the order of the day and we didn't get moralistically hung up on every little abstract detail.
But
But I can
I agree
dream.
with everything you just said, with the addition of, like, at this point we can still turn things around, but if things don't turn around, like, for example, if for some bullshit reason Donald Trump were to lose the 2024 election and Biden were to get a second term, like, I don't know what we would do. It would
Yeah,
just,
if these shadows remain unaltered by the future, our civilization will die.
at that point, I think we should just, go into, journey into low orbit and exterminatus the whole thing.
I vote we elect Elon Musk as God Emperor. Elon Musk is the one oligarchic billionaire that I actually wouldn't mind if he owned the planet. Like, if we must have an oligarchic overlord, I would prefer it be Elon Musk than Bezos or Soros or Zuckerberg. So, God Emperor Elon for future reference.
All right, buddy. I've been Mystery.
I have been Dalton Mortimer, the Authenticator, and we have been the Duality of Men. Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.